Okay, here's our hammer. This is the hammer handle we're going to put together, and as part of an assembly demonstration I'm going to give you the top of the hammer too, so we can put this together. Kind of fun. So we have two different versions in here. This is kind of an introduction again to configurations. We have two different versions of the hammer built two different ways, and yeah, and that's what it looks like. And all we're doing when we're doing the configurations, we're just turning off or suppressing some features and unsuppressing other ones. So here's our hammer, and this is where we're going to be putting together. And if you look at the loft, if we take a rollback bar and kind of look at the loft and see how this is put together, we have a number of different profiles on a number of different planes. So our right profile number 1 is going to be on the right plane. Profile number, profile number 0, I should say, is going to be in the right plane, which is the first profile, but profile number 1, labeled as number 1, is going to be on right plane number 1. So you can see we offset that plane. All the planes are going to be offset from the back, and we're going to move that to the left, not to the right, from the left. So keep that in mind as you put this together. And then profile number 2 is going to be on right plane number 2. So again, that's offset 4 inches from the original right plane, and so on and so forth. So if you look at the drawing, and as we put this together, you're going to be looking at, first of all, you're going to be offsetting your plane. So you're going to go to the right plane, put your profile on that right plane, and you're going to copy that right plane over here. If you look at the other loft video that I have, video number 25, I believe, it will show you how to offset those planes and how to put profiles in those planes. But we'll cover that briefly here too. And then profile number 2 is going to be over here, so you can see right plane number 1, right plane number 2, right plane number 3, right plane number 4 over here, so on and so forth. The thing to keep in mind is that they're all offset from the original right plane. Something else to keep in mind too is our profiles. We put this together, you want to make sure that the profiles are the right dimensions. So we're going to be using ellipses in here. As you see in the sheet notes, they're all ellipses, and you're going to put in the appropriate dimensions. So this 1.1 dimension is going to be visible from the front view. This is a section of the right view, which means we're kind of looking at it from the front. And this is a section from the front view, which means we're going to be looking at it from the top. We're going to be coming down and looking at it from the top. So keep these in mind, these two different dimensions. So then after that, we're going to be putting, we don't have our plane 5 in there necessarily, but we're going to be putting in our extension on the top. We're going to make sure we're doing the right one here. So yeah, we're going to extend it up to the top. So you can see what that looks like. Before we do the trim, what we're doing is we're going to take the very top of the handle, as they might be doing when they're actually fabricating it. We're going to extend that out. We're going to trim it back for the first part of it, and then the second part of it, we're going to put a trim on it with a draft angle to it. So you can see it's kind of got that, those cuts to it, which actually makes it look like the real hammer. And then we have a cut up here, a top cut in here that we can put a wedge in here once we put the hammer inside of that and want to lock it up and make it nice and tight. Then we have that top cut in here, and that'll finish out our model. Last thing we want to do, it's important, chamfer comes last. Always put that chamfer in last, and put it in the middle here, and kind of follow the steps in here. So the main loft, the extension up here, trim back to that point, trim back to this point with a draft on it, make your cut up here, and then the last feature is going to be the chamfer. So now we're going to go ahead and sketch our profiles in preparation of putting our loft together. So we're going to use the right plane. We're going to put this profile in place. And if you want to learn how to fully define an ellipse, please go to the Saros wheel video and go ahead and review that. So I'm going to go through this and assume that you know how to offset planes and go ahead and work with ellipses. So our first profile is going to be profile 0 right in the right plane. And our second profile is going to be on right plane number 1. Remember that's going to be offset by 1.75, I believe that is. And then the third one, the second profile plane, right plane number 2, which is going to be our third profile, but labeled number 2. So you want to make sure that these profiles correspond with the planes. So you have right plane number 1 is going to have profile 1 on it, just to reiterate that. Profile 0 is going to be on the right plane, and then so on and so forth as we move down this. So we're going to get all of our profiles in place, and then we're going to be ready for our loft. So there's all of our profiles. What we want to do is we want to put in our guide curve. So let's do this. We're going to go to the front plane, and we're going to sketch out a Style Spline. So we're going to click on that plane, the front plane. We're going to go up here to Sketch. That's going to initiate that. And then we're going to go up here to Splines. Up here, if you go to the pull-down arrow, don't want to do the regular spline, but we're going to do a Style Spline. It's just a little bit easier to define. And we're going to go ahead and keep the default settings in this. So let's go normal to this. And let's just sketch this out. Now remember, whatever guide curve you're going to use, it's got to intersect each one of the profiles when you put this together. So conceivably, we can take our first point of that guide curve and kind of put it on that circle, that profile, and just kind of sketch it loosely between those. We're going to define this a little bit later. You don't want to get it right on top of that, because if you actually click on it, what it's going to do is it's going to put this endpoint right on top of that point over here, perhaps, or in that circle. But the real line that needs to be defined to that isn't going to intersect that, and you're going to have difficulty with it. So just kind of loosely sketch that out, and now we're going to define it. So we're going to make sure that this endpoint of the Style Spline is going to be on that point of the profile, which is our profile number 4. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. So click on that line with the control key to press, click on that point, we're going to make that coincident, and that's going to help define this. So we want to make sure this is fully defined when we're done. We're going to go ahead and make that coincident. And then this one coincident. We're going to make sure we're not selecting too much. So let's make sure we just click on that point and that arc, that spline. We'll do it that way. And then this one, we're just going to park that at the very end. So what controls that spline and the endpoint of the arc, or the endpoint of the spline, are going to be the same things. So now let's take our endpoints, if we can do that without goofing it up too bad. And let's go ahead and define this. We want to take this endpoint, since it's closer to that. We're going to take this endpoint, or that Style Spline point, and we're going to go ahead and click on the midpoint of that ellipse, and we're going to make that vertical. We do the same thing over here. We're going to take this endpoint, or this Style Spline point, and hopefully, I'm meeting with some resistance there, we're going to make that one vertical too. And then this one and that one, we're going to make that vertical. And when we do that, it magically, without dimensions, just with those relationships in there, it's like fully defined. It can't go anywhere, so that gets it fully defined. So by making those vertical, those Style Spline points, those control points, and making sure that the Style Spline is right on the ellipses that are going to define our lot eventually, that fully defines it. So now with center line right down the middle, start from the origin, and it doesn't make sure you don't terminate that on the model itself. Just kind of keep that loose over here, and we're going to go ahead and mirror that. So the Style Spline, center line, horizontal center line, mirror entities, puts it on the bottom, and with the symmetric relationship in there, that is fully defined too. So now we have that ready to go. So if we go ahead and rebuild this, now we have our sketch 11 down here. Yours could be a different name, but we're going to call that guide. Okay, with all of our profiles in place and our guide curve, let's go ahead and loft this baby. So we need to have independent sketches in here when you put this together. So it's not guided by one sketch, it's guided by many sketches. So they all have to be closed to do that. Go to Features, go to Lofted Boss Space, and let's just begin to pick our profiles. And one way to do this is just go to your Feature Manager tree. One reason why we actually number our profiles is we want to make sure that we can put these in order. Sometimes you have to click these twice in Feature Flyout. So if you don't see it populate over here, then you might have to go ahead and actually force it to do so. So with those 4 profiles in there, we want to see the preview in here. It isn't really showing. So you might want to take some of your control points over here and move those around a little bit, guide points too. So if it's not really quite lining up. But once you get your guide curve put in place, it should ignore those control points and actually just go off that guide curve. So now those control points actually disappear. So remember that in the Loft video. You're going to just pick a single loop, and we're going to pick this one down here. Again, single loop, green check mark. Check the other Loft video. It kind of explains what you're doing there. And now you have that in place. And if you go to the green check mark, bang. Now you have your mahogany handle, at least a part of it. Alright, so let's check our mass properties. Let's check it to our master model. that we're using. This is a completed model, and let's take a look at our mask properties up to this point. So this is just after the loft, and you should be getting the same value. Just having difficulty picking that thing. So there we go. We don't have the chamfer in here. It's just a loft as it is, and with the control guide, control curves in there. Let's go to evaluate mask properties. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. So I'm going to use a snipping tool and just go ahead and grab this, just the items that we need here. Pull that aside, close this, Control Tab gets me to the other model, go back to mask properties over here, and let's see what we get. So pull this back. Okay, mass is 0.1897 and minus 4.5458. Oh, uh-oh. Not the same. So we're going to go no to that. Let's make sure our options are correct. That's up to the highest. So we're going to go to OK there. Close this out. Let's go back to our other model and check this out. Again, if you don't get the right mask properties, uh-oh, there we go. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see if that changes things. Yeah, it does. It does. So let's go ahead and take a snapshot of that guy again. And pull that aside. Go back to our other model after you close this out. Control Tab, mask properties. This is the master model here, so we want to make sure that what's in the snipping tool window over here is the same. So 1897 and 5458. Good. We're right on track. So we're going to do that. We're going to say no, close this out, and now we're going to move on. Let's go back to our other model and continue on. Okay, moving on, let's take a look at our drawing here. Okay, so we have everything in place. Don't have the chamfer in. We're going to put that in last, remember. And our last plane over here, our plane number 4, is right here. So part of that profile gets cut by this cut over here. So we need to make an extrusion from that plane over here to 2 1/8 inches off to the left. So let's get that out of the way, and let's just do that. So I want to make sure you pick the right plane over here, not the right plane, correct plane. Want to make sure you pick the correct plane, not the right plane, but right plane number 4, and we're going to click on that face over here, go to Sketch, click on the Sketch button over here, Convert Entities. It's going to take that geometry that we have in here, put it in a sketch form, and now we get to do a feature with it. Extruded Boss Space, and 2.125, and then green check mark. Okay, again, back to our drawing. Let's take a little peek at this. What we're going to do is we're going to take the very end of it. So now we have, by the way, we have everything in place. We have all the material in here. It goes up to 2.125, but it's round in here. We need to cut that square. So if you look at this dimension here, 1/2 inch, and 1 inch over here, 1 inch is going to be in the longer portion of that ellipse. We're going to make sure we put that in place, and we're going to cut that back by 1.5 inches. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and scroll this around a little bit. We're going to go ahead and click in his face, go to Sketch, maybe center rectangle, sketch that out. So the long dimension over here is going to be 1 inch. So we're going to put a dimension of 1 on that. 1/2 inch on the side, you notice it just fits inside of that. Oops. 0.5, not 0.05, which is good. So now we're going to cut it. So we're going to cut that back about 1.5 inches. So not the full length, but we're going to cut that back 1.5 inches, and that's going to give us the portion of the handle that's actually going to be going into the hammerhead. So this is going to be kind of different. Pay attention. Go to Features, Extruded Cut, and we're going to go back 1.5 inches. But you're thinking, oh, it's going to cut the inside of that. But if we do this, click Cut, flip side to Cut, it's going to cut it on the outside. Now the preview doesn't do anything different, and we'll see that again up in the next feature. But it's really going to cut to the outside of that. And blind, we have a value of 1.5. If we go to the green check mark, bang, makes that cut. So that's really kind of cool. And this is the way they probably would cut it in wood shop or on the factory floor. Alrighty, let's put in that second cut. So what we could do is we could try to take this sketch up here, since we need a sketch just like that, and project it on his face and then cut it from there. I've already tried it. It doesn't like it. It doesn't like having that profile being defined by something that's already been created there for whatever reason. So we're going to do this a little bit different. We're going to actually click on this face, go up here to Sketch, Sketch again, and we're going to convert entities in here. We've done this only a couple times, but we're going to click on this, And what we don't want to do is actually have that ellipse. We don't want that as part of it. So we're going to take that, we're going to delete that right away. And we're going to have to click on some edges. So with the control key depressed, let's go ahead and click on this edge, turn this over here, we're going to click on this edge, control key depressed this whole time. And now let's go back to convert entities, and now we have that geometry in place. Hopefully. Let's try that again. Convert entities, there it is, black line. We have the on edge relationship there. You're going to need that, know that for your evaluation. And then we're going to go ahead and extrude that back. So let's go ahead and do the same thing again. We're going to go to Features, Extruded Cut, and now we're going to do something a little bit different. So this time we're going to do Through Wall. So we're going to go back, we're going to cut that through wall. It's in the center, so we also want to do Flip Side to Cut. So now we're going to cut in the outside of that box. And now we want to put a draft in there, and I believe it's about 10 degrees. Now, it's given us kind of a weird preview. That's not what we're going to get, but make sure you click on Flip Side to Cut. Going to cut to the outside. And a 10-degree draft. Don't want to do draft outward. A little funky there. Not giving us a preview. It's not very intuitive. But if you do that, now it puts in that cut. Okay, so let's check our mask properties right now before we do any more work. We still have a cut in here on the front of this, on the top of this, on the right of it, in order to put in the hammerhead and make that tight, nice and tight when we put that in place. And we have a chamfer in the back that we're going to put in too. So let's go ahead and check our mask properties. Let's go to our master model over here and check the mask properties in this guy at this point. And so I took the rollback bar, scrolled that down to underneath that trim, so that we have all the features in there that we're looking for. And let's go ahead and take a look at this and put this on our sketch snip tool, our snipping tool. Go ahead and close that out, mask properties, and let's go ahead and open that up again for this model and see what we got. So let's go ahead and compare it. 2147 and then 52671, right on the mark. Alrighty, so let's finish this up. What we want to do is we want to put this cut over here, what it would look like to be on the front plane. I'm suggesting a slot tool might work on this, so let me show you how to do that. It's at 0.9 inches by, looks like 0.075 inches in regard to the cut. So we're going to go to the front plane to do that, and we're going to go normal to that. Now let's go ahead and do it over here, and let's just go right up to Sketch, Slot Tool. Let's go ahead and choose the straight slot. And we're going to go ahead and pick one end of that slot, sketch that out over here, and then bring that up a little bit. And now we're going to define this. So remember, we're going to go ahead and make that 0.9 inches. So we're going to pick on the circle, not the center of the circle over here, but the end point over here would be good. So we're going to just drop that into place arbitrarily. Go ahead and take that leader, and we're going to make that the maximum condition, and then 0.9. So Control A will select all that, and then 0.9. And then up. Oh, what's it saying here? Maybe we don't have the right relationship in here. So let's see. What do we do here? Okay. I'm not certain what happened there. But I took the slot sketch entity and kind of moved that around a little bit until we got some geometry that actually works. So this dimension is going to be 0.075. Once you do that, real simple one, extruded cut. Through all both, green check mark. Now we have that in place. So let's go back to our master model at the same location. It's called our top cut. Let's go ahead and take a look at our evaluate mask properties. Let's take a snapshot of that with our snipping tool. So we'll take a look at our mask, pull that aside, close this, Control Tab gets us back to our other model. Mask properties again, and let's go ahead and take our snipping tool window and bring that back. So 2132, same, and 52252 down here, negative value. Looks like we're in pretty good shape. Last thing we want to do is a chamfer. So just like before, we're going to go ahead and put a chamfer in the very end. It doesn't look like we have a chamfer here yet. So let's go ahead and we're going to have to put that on. So this is the model we're actually working on, so we're going to put a chamfer in that, but let's go ahead and take a look at our master model and see what the chamfer looks like in this. So our bottom chamfer down here, we're going to look at our mask properties. And we're going to go ahead and record that. So we're going to go to New and take a look at the mask properties here. We're going to take that window, pull to the side like we did before, and close that guy out. Then over here we're going to put in our chamfer. So we have a lot of stuff down here, but we're not going to go into that. We're just going to keep that below the bar. But let's go up to Features. Chamfer is going to be, if we go underneath Fillet, is going to be, so we're going to pick, let's see what our choice is up here. You're going to have to take your mouse and brush over it. So it's going to be Angle and Distance. So we're going to click on this edge over here for the chamfer. You want to make sure you're picking the one on the right plane. You want to make sure it's 45 degrees and 0.1 is the value there. So let's go back to our mask properties and take a look at that. Evaluate mask properties. And we're going to bring our snipping window back in. So the mask is 2130 up here, and then 52322. So it's a little bit off. So for some reason that chamfer on a loft doesn't resolve itself consistently every time. So I'm going to go, that's the reason why I want to have that chamfer at the very end, so I can see what values everybody else is getting. So I'm going to evaluate your mask properties and everything up to the point we're going to get to that chamfer. So make sure you pay attention to that. That'll be points off if we were to see this in our evaluation. So that's your hammer handle. And part of an assembly exercise here in the next week or so, I'm going to give you the head of the hammer, and we're going to put this all together. So one last thing before we go. It's not considered good practice to have all this stuff below your rollback bar. When you're done with the model, make sure all this stuff disappears. And you just right click on it and you can tell it to delete. You'd have to expose it first from what's underneath the rollback bar to get that done. And rename your features. It's really hard to tell what these are, but you can do handle loft in here for that one. Doesn't matter what you name them to. You can name them to the same names that I have. And then you might call that an end extrusion, end cap perhaps, end cap cut 1, end cap cut 2. I have a bunch of different names down here: handle end cut, handle end 2, cut 2, and so on and so forth. And then we have a head cut down here, maybe the chamfer cut, whatever you want to call that. So you can call that the end chamfer if you want to. But rename your features, nothing under the rollback bar.